let's talk about shame and where shame comes from. Because if you're like me, we all deal with shame. Shame is a powerful force, and it causes us to make, irrational decisions, to do things in our life that we shouldn't do. It creates addictions. It creates self-defenses. It creates, self-fulfilling prophecies that end up coming back later in life and creating patterns and loops that keep us stuck in areas that we don't want to be stuck in. And I think everybody on here, safe to say, that we hate shame. No one likes shame. I mean, we've probably all said to our partners or family members, don't shame me. But do we really understand what shame is? And I want to take a little time. So I want you to stick with me for, 15, 20 minutes. And I want to explain to you the best way that I can so you can understand what shame actually is and how it affects you. So in order to do that, I have to go back to a story that maybe you've heard me talk about. I was laying in my bed and I was drunk and I was fighting with my wife while I was texting. And I got to the point I was so drunk I couldn't even hold my phone. I didn't have a rational thought. I don't remember exactly what I was texting. I was just mad and trying to say anything I can. And then all of a sudden inside my head there was this completely sober voice where the room got sober and everything got sober, and it says, don't text nothing, go to sleep. Nothing you say right now is going to help. That's the last time I touched any alcohol. My life changed right then because I knew that there was something behind that voice. And that voice was very different than anything that I'd ever been taught or anyone had ever told me about. And I went on this quest to find out what this voice is. And this is such an important part for you to understand, because in order for you to understand shame, you have to understand there's different parts of you that you might not be aware of. And awareness is really just being aware of the different parts of you that you have. And I'm going to say this word is called capacity. Because up to this year, up to, me going through, that point where I had stopped drinking and it switched like that, up to that point, I'd stopped drinking, 10, 15 times. And I tried doing it right here. And this is where most people do. If you can just read enough books, if you can, listen to enough YouTubes, if you can, get enough information, you can white knuckle your way through this. And I had never really enjoyed the benefits of all alcoholism had to do with it. But up to that point in my life at 45, it was basically the best way I knew how to self-medicate myself, because the doctors weren't doing it the right way. My friends weren't really helping me. My marriage was really good, and I had a great wife and good kids, and I realized, there's something going on if I still want this. And that's when my soul rose up inside of me. There's a part of you that you don't understand yet. It's such an important part. There is part of you that you don't understand. And I had to learn that this part of me, the self part of me, this part of that was in my soul, that what it wants to do is it wants to teach me how to have more capacity. Not so I don't have more boundaries and then I don't have, more limitations. It wants me to open up and be able to hold more love and feeling and emotions. So where does shame fit into all this? Well, what's holding us back? What keeps us from stopping to drink? What keeps us from even believing there's a part of us inside there that has our best interest at mind? Shame. Well, where does this shame come from and how does it start? Well, in order for me to do this, you have to understand that there is, when I woke up, there was two things I knew. One was that I'm either my best friend or I'm my worst enemy. There's no in between. It's not Kayla, it's not my kids, it's not my friends, it's not the church, it's not the government. I'm either my best friend or I'm my worst enemy. And I had to realize, who is this then? Because if there's something separate in there and there is a voice that it was completely sober and talking to me, well then who am I out here? What is this? And this is what you have to understand. For you to understand shame, you have to understand what this is that we're actually wearing. This is your soil suit. This is your human body. This is me. This is Jason. Okay? This is where I have, my personality. This is where I have my attachment styles. This is where I have my fears, my anxieties. This is where my DNA is. From my ancestors, I have the DNA of my children were inside here. Everything that, this earth has is right here. And this earth provided this. And this is very important. This right here is what I call a soil suit, and it's loaned to us by the earth. Now that might sound new agey to you, and you might not like that terminology, but you can go right to the Bible, and the Bible says that out of the earth that He created us, from the dust of the earth, He created us. He literally took the earth and He created us from this earth, and so we are loaned. We are this suit right here that we have right here. This is loaned to us from the earth as a soil suit to be able to house this soul. Now, what is our soul? Let's say you got in an accident and your arm got cut off. And let's say your other arm got cut off. Are you still you? Yeah. Let's say your leg get cut off and your other leg gets cut off. So now you're just a torso and a body. Are you still you? Yeah. Let's say you just keep on getting sliced until there's barely anything left. At what point are you not you? And it's a really important question to answer. And it's a question that I've asked myself quite often. Who is me? Who is the real me? The real me is housed inside this body. Now, this is according to ancient texts. This is according to religion. There is a part of us that is housed inside this body is the true you. And that true you is connected to God. It has a source energy in it that is unbelievable. It has, and it moves to the earth's rhythms. It moves to the earth, the sun and the moon and the stars, and because it's created the same way the waves move to the earth because of the moon. We do too, because we're made from the earth. Now, this is very important. And there's a reason I'm explaining all this, because once you start to identify that this soil suit right here, this earth suit, is to harness, or now I wouldn't say the word harness, it's to help develop this spark inside of you. This spark that is eternal, the spark that God has made you, the special you, the personal you. And this earth is designed to help us with two things. One is emotions, to understand emotions. And the highest emotion, the emotion that moves mountains, the emotion that we're here to really learn is love. But in order to feel love, you have to feel pain. Now, you don't have to. Now, pain doesn't make love, and we shouldn't self-seek pain, but pain gives us reference to what actually love is. So these are important things. So this soil suit right here, this soil suit right here, what happens is there is a self inside this, and it's healthy. And this is where it can get really confusing, because as we're growing up, we're always told that self is bad. You should deny yourself. No, the true self, this soil suit, is actually really good. It's very powerful. There's nothing to be afraid of. And this is where shame is born. You got to understand, this is very important, because the true you, the Jason part of me, he's not good or bad. He's just an earth suit. Just as you were to look at the tree, you're not going to say the tree is good or bad. It's just part of the earth. Now, can it do good or bad things? Can that tree fall over and break a whole bunch of stuff? Can it get weak? Can it get malnourished and the limbs fall off and cause a lot of damage? Absolutely, just like you can. You see the difference here? Now, why do we filter much different than the tree? And I'm going to get into this, because the true self, you, is connected to God. Very important. It's connected to your soul, and that soul is connected to God. So the true you, the self, is good. And when we're babies, we learn either how to utilize this soil suit to do amazing, great, creative things if we're raised with a family that knows how to teach us to use this, or we're taught through what our family learned, and what through society has taught us, and through what governments have taught us, and schools have taught us, and religions has taught us, through shame itself. Now let me give you an example of this. So this is where the false shame, this is where the false self, this is where you could call the ego is born. And this is where shame emerges. Because up to this point, we're talking about soul connected with God, perfect, has all answers. We're talking about our, the true you, your true self, connected, nothing wrong with that. Do we come in the world with limitations? Yeah, we come into the world with limitations, but neither of these are good or bad. What happens then is there is a false self that it becomes born in our life. And how is this false self, or what I call ego, born? Let's just take a baby, for example. Let's just say a baby is walking. When a baby starts to walk, this is the most incredible time to watch life actually progress. And this is a time, if you were raised in a healthy family, and you were raised in a family that encourages growth, and to understand the true development of a family, this is where you teach your kid to have really good self-confidence, to have really, so you want to help them to understand and have confidence in self, right? It's what you want to do. But just imagine with me if that baby, he's walking, and in a healthy family, that baby, he's walking, and he falls down. In a healthy family, everyone's going to be like, oh, good job. And if they get back, good job. They're not going to say, you did a bad job. Why did you fall? You shouldn't have fallen. Now, if that baby, when that baby falls, it's not thinking through shame yet. It's not thinking good or bad. It's literally just registering information. I fell, and in a healthy environment, a family will help them get back up, give them more confidence, and they might give them a tip or two to move in a different direction. Maybe you need to put your hand here, or maybe you shouldn't take 4 or 5 steps, and just adjust a little bit. No shame. But what happens if you come from a very, very dysfunctional family where shame is really prevalent there? Let's just take that same child, and he's running across the room, and he's learning how to walk, and he falls down. And let's just say those parents mock him and laugh at him. Ha, ha, ha. You fell down. You're such a loser. You're such a sucky kid. You shouldn't even try to walk. Now, that kid's going to do one of two things. It's going to do one of two things. That child is either going to say, I'm not even going to try to walk, because every time I try to walk, I get mocked like this. Now, I'm using a very extreme situation, but I'm sure this has probably happened. And that child probably is going to resist walking for a long time because there is a voice that raises up. Because that child, the true self knows this is ridiculous. You just fell. This is just information. This is, you get up, you adjust. The true self doesn't view it like this. The true self just views it through love and encouragement, and this is just data to get better. But the false self comes in because it needs to protect you. And this is very important, because for a long time, I hated this false self. I hated this, what I called ego. And then I come to realize, wait a second. Most of us come from families where maybe they didn't get that abusive, but they did some abuse to us. And they maybe didn't even mean it. And you've probably done some to your kids yourself without knowing it, because we just perpetuate what we already know. And we repeat a system. And in that process, if you haven't learned how to digest shame, then that shame, what it does is it has to protect you. Because just think of that little baby, for example. If a baby falls on the ground, that baby doesn't have the contents to understand if it's good, if what it did was good or bad. What happens is that child becomes good or bad. It becomes good or bad. And a child cannot become all bad. It just can't. That child has to protect. So this false self comes in, basically the adult part of the kid, and says, nope, I'm taking over from here. You can't handle us. And it's like, it's okay, kid, I got this. And these little things that happen in our life create a little bit more and more of this ego, until all of a sudden we operate through this ego. And in our normal conversations, some of the time we're talking through self, but it's the moment we get triggered, that ego jumps right back at, and it's trying to protect us. It's doing its job, because we've been fractured, we've been hurt, we've been manipulated by our own family, by our own friends, by our spouses, by our kids. In a healthy child, in a true self, that child would say to itself, this is ridiculous. I love myself. I know where I get my value from. This is fine. I'm just learning. But that false self, depending on what kind of caretakers you have, is going to be depending on how strong that ego, what I call, is. That's where shame is born. That shame right there, that shame is protecting you from yourself, your worst enemy. I'm going to give you an example. I went to coffee this morning with a friend of mine, and he's a marriage counselor, good guy, and he gives this example in his classes, so I think he wouldn't mind me saying this. And when he was a child, he grew up on a Native American reservation where his dad was a missionary to the Navajo Indians. And he grew up with a dad preaching and in a Christian home and all that. But because of the system that most of us are in Western society, we live under a system where shame is basically our lesson. It's our teacher. We teach people to get inside these little boxes and to sit inside this little structure, and as long as we can do that really good, then we don't have to feel the shame. But the moment we start pushing and we start, going outside these boxes, we start hearing these voices and the false stuff. It needs to protect us. So my friend, he talks about the story where when he was a child, he used to wet the bed. Now, I don't know how old he was, 10, 11, 12, and this can be frustrating as a parent. But, his dad, being a very probably systematic thinker and coming from a time where, you teach through force, you teach through shame, you teach through that structure. And so he told him, he's like, hey, if you keep wetting the bed, what I'm going to do is you're going to have to wear a dress to school. And because his dad was a teacher and, it was a one-bedroom schoolhouse back then. But so Don didn't help him. You can imagine. And then all of a sudden, he wets the bed and his dad makes him wear a dress to school. And Don talks about that story about the day of and how he felt, he says he remembers thinking, I'm not going to let this hurt me. I'm not going to let this hurt me. And then he says that's where his humor was born. He started using humor as a way to deal with this. This is a very powerful lesson here. And I said to Don, do you remember that night? Do you remember how you felt that night or the next day or the next week? Because what happened to you was very traumatic. I mean, if you make a boy in a culture like that, where, and this was kind of the way the church did things back then. They liked to use shame. They did it, the Native Americans, they cut all their hair off. That was a very shameful thing for these natives. And they used shame as a tactic, and you can imagine how this made him feel. And I said, do you remember how you processed all that? And he said, no. And I find this very interesting because most of us, I don't think process very well. If you think about some of the most traumatic things, you might remember the day of, some of the things that happened, but do you remember if you were a child, how it felt that night? Do you remember how it felt the next day or the next weeks to come and how you processed that thought out? And did you have somebody there to help you process those thoughts out? Or were you just there to process that thought out? Now, this is where the ego is actually born because the ego's there to help you process this out. Like, no, you're good. We're going to protect you. We've got it from here. But that problem with that ego is it's not teaching you the truth. It's teaching you to protect yourself. It's teaching you how to guard your heart and to keep it. Because every time you open your heart, now you can't get mad at yourself. I have come to terms with my ego. I love my ego because it protected me from people that would maybe had killed me had I not learned how to protect myself. But there comes a time in life where that ego is not serving you anymore. Where that self-protection, it's not helping you in your marriage. It didn't help me in my marriage. It didn't help me with my kids. It didn't help me in my job. It didn't help me with my relationship with foods and how I had a relationship with my body. It didn't help me in my relationship with my animals or in any area I did. I basically start to self-destruct because the ego, and anytime someone would push that ego and tell me that I'm not good at something, guess what would come out? I was ready. Still am. And all of us, to an extent, still have this ego. But can you see how shame is born out of this? And shame is it's the unnatural process that we have that we know when we're operating out of this, it creates anger. And we know that anger is a secondary emotion. It just is birthed out of fear. But we see all the repercussions in our life. We see how our family says that they have to walk around in eggshells with you. We see where anger pops out in different areas, or we start to think these self-defeating thoughts and the self-doubt, and we start going down these paths of self-defeat because of shame. But really, that shame is there trying to protect us from the original wounds. And what I want to help people do is understand a couple things. Number one, you have original wounds. And when you got traumatized, it's very important, when you got traumatized, whatever it was in your life, and maybe you came from a great family, maybe it came through a car accident that no one had control over, maybe it came through a fluke of you getting sick, or maybe you had a handicapped sibling, or maybe you had some things that, maybe your parents were good, but you know, you got hurt in other areas. But some of you, maybe you came from some just really bad parents, you know. You had bad siblings and you had a lot of things happen to you. And now you're trying to do the good work. You're trying to white knuckle it. You're trying to not drink. You're trying to not eat, you know, bad. You're trying to work hard and do what everyone tells you. And it's just not freaking working. And you know it's not working. It's because it's not supposed to work. It's not supposed to work. The ego will never get you out of it. As much as you can come to terms with it, he's never going to get you out of your problems. The way for you to get out of your problems is for you to get back to that original self and understand who that guy is inside you that wants to talk to you, that's connected to God, that has the answers for your life. And it's a journey. It's a journey. And it starts not here. It actually starts here. It starts in your body. You know, most people, their bodies are so deregulated with, you know, processed foods and alcohol and different pills and different drugs that they don't really need. You know, there's a lot of people, fentanyl, and there's just so many crazy things that people are using right now. And I think people are getting sick of it. And in order for, there's so many things you can do right away to reverse this, to get the ego down, to get the self down, the bad stuff down, and to start to get you to a place where you can start to think logically. You know, and that's one of the things that my soul taught me right away when I woke up. The alcohol went away, and he said to me right away, pineapples and pistachios. It didn't say it to me, but I knew. I went to the store the next day, and for about a month or two straight, I ate pineapples and pistachios. Still do, almost every day. Because my soul knows the answers, you see? Your soul knows the answers. Your soul wants to talk to you. Your soul wants to give you the information. But most of us have no idea where to even look. We don't understand where the shame actually lives. And in order for you to, well, what can I do? How do I overcome shame? Well, first off, start eating better. You know, you got to first identify what it is you're actually trying to overcome. You're trying to overcome your false self. The self that you've created to protect you, these layers of self-protection, these layers that you think are serving you but are probably getting away. I've come to recognize that every time that this thing pops up, this guy pops up, this part of Jason pops up, he comes up when he's triggered, and it's usually when I hear something I don't want to hear, and if I think about it, it's because it's related to something that happened a long time ago. And to sit with that, and to not blame my wife or my kids, it's a painful place. You know, this is so real that when this first started happening to me, and I said, I'm just going to lean into this trauma. I'm going to find out what it is. I'm going to remember these memories, and I'm going to let it, I'm going to let these memories come up. Do you know where it started to hurt? My body just started, my back. I could feel, there's this stuff in our bodies called fascia. It's the same thing that's in like oranges and lemons and limes, those little lines, they're full of fluid. And our body has fascia all over it. And man, my back was popping and pulling. And why? Because our body, scientifically proven, holds trauma. When you get traumatized as a kid, your body, holds the score. It keeps score. It knows. And years later, when you get those memories back, all of a sudden they start to open up and they start to rewire. That's why it's so important to have hydration. That's why it's so important to be eating right. That's why it's so important to go outside in nature a little bit. I tell people, if you want to go through some healing and get connected to your soul and start to get some of these answers, you got to go by yourself. You got to turn the phone off. You got to get up. You got to stop the noise and get by yourself. And how do you do that? Go walk in the woods. Go walk in nature. Go, if you don't have any woods, well, you live in the inner city, you can find woods. You got to drive a little bit. What price are you willing to pay to find yourself again? This world has done everything it can to get you from believing who you are to even understanding that you have the answers. You don't need it from this guy or that guy or this book or that book. Those things are tools to help you remember who you already are, but you know it. You just have to put yourself in that environment, and you have to remember. You have to remember. So that's what I want to help people do. I want to help people remember, especially men. I think men are hurting. I think we're sick of alcohol. We're sick of meats. We're sick of video games. We're sick of politics. We're kind of sick of sports. We're sick. Our soul needs rest. So it needs rest. This is where you find it. This is when we let the false self go. We start to build up our self-esteem. We start to realize that our soul is infinitely connected to God, our Maker. And as we start to understand these truths, man, you can't help but change. You can't help but change. Just to understand, just to understanding where this comes from, just to be enlightened, to know, like, man, I don't have to feel shame. That part of me doesn't have to exist. You just got to be willing to do the hard work. You got to be willing to sit with the shame a little bit, to sit with that pain and see where it comes from and identify it. Let it hurt your body a little bit, and to bring forgiveness, and to cry, and to feel emotions, and to realize that it's okay to feel emotions and sad, and because most of my life I couldn't feel any emotions, and now, man, I'm glad my wife works, because sometimes I can cry. It's uncomfortable for her. But sometimes I'm at that point in my life of just never feeling emotions, just let it cry. Well, men aren't supposed to cry, exactly. That's what you've been taught. That's where that shame has been keeping score. Doesn't mean I sit over here and sometimes I just kind of cry a little bit. I don't even know why. And I know now that it's my body releasing pain and trauma. It's letting that shame go down a little bit more and more so I can hear my soul and I can hear God talking to me. So I hope this helps. I hope you understand that there's more to you. There's a power inside you that you don't understand, that this earth suit is powerful, that you shouldn't be mad at it. You should be very thankful that you have it. I love my earth suit. I take care of it. I eat calmly. I put good foods in it. I'm thankful that God gave me this. He lent me this body. Man, can you say that to yourself? Are you happy? Man, do you understand that less than a year ago I weighed way more than this? I looked in the mirror, I was disgusted at myself, and now I love the earth suit that God lent me. But you have to understand, you got to get through the shame and this pain to find that, to love yourself. You can do it. You can do it. Just hang in there, eat fruits, go on walks, get disconnected, and seek that soul out. Eat fruits.